This is Jeff with Final Boss. We are at long last doing the Flash Fiction contest edits. Actually, not at long last. This one I was pretty fast about. But yeah, the goal was to inspire you all to take a swing at some Flash Fiction. Try it out. Get your hands dirty and get some writing done. And you all rose to the occasion. We got three finalists here. And we're going to read through their stories. So get excited. This one is by Cat Dog, an awesome contributor to the site. He helps me with the Discord things that are way over my head. And so I'm excited to read the story. So this story is called Five Senses. That's the prompt. The prompt for the Flash Fiction was to write a Flash Fiction using all five senses, sight, touch, sound, taste, the whole gambit. So a lot of writers struggle with evocative writing, and it's something I think that's really, really important to, we experience the world through our senses, through our thoughts, our senses, all these things. And it's really important that in your stories you are using those senses to put the reader in that same place that we are in our normal lives, which is experiencing the world through senses. So yeah, let's see how it went with Five Senses by Cat Dog. All right. We rescued my mother from the Hollow Beast just before it was able. So I like this concept of the Hollow Beast. Really, really cool. I think so. There's kind of a few different schools of thought when it comes to fantasy names, right? And I think this is actually a good use of fantasy names. So a lot of people will tell you that if you're using a lot of made-up words early in the story, it will get a little confusing. And I see a few more, so we might be bumping into that challenge. But a word like Hollow Beast sometimes lets you get that new, like, hey, we're in a fantasy world concept in, but it also is understandable enough, right? It's combining two words. Hollow Beast, I know it's going to be some sort of like soulless monster in some general sense. So by using kind of those combination words, you can get away with adding some extra world building a little bit early before you kind of explain everything. So this is a great way to add new, add world building early without it being confusing. Combining two normal words to evoke. Yeah, combining two normal words to evoke an idea. And we kind of know what a Hollow Beast is. We rescued my mother from the Hollow Beast before it was able to escape with its meal. Our shouts must have scared it off. Her mother was cold to my fingers, and her whispered pants were weary to our ears. So one, I like that we're getting into the scene. The construction of these sentences is a little backwards. So we're doing an interesting thing, which is I think a temptation a lot of writers have, is describing everything from the viewpoint character's lens, right? Let me just restructure this. So yeah, so we're coming in everything from the viewpoint character, which is, the speaker, right? So it's like, cold to my fingers. Whispered pants were weary to our ears. So like this construction, you don't necessarily, because we're in a point of view, our shouts must have scared it off. And we're also jumping between a plural point of view. Our shouts must have scared it off versus my fingers. Our shouts must have scared it off. This could be, I should put it on suggesting, sorry. So this could be, when I tried to lift, mom off the ground, her skin was cold. Her skin froze chilled my fingertips, whatever. That we're trying to be extra evocative. So like this is, you can just say like her skin, you can make her skin the action of the sentence. Are you doing all the edits? I am. I'm starting with the five senses. I think Love Ripples will be next, which is yours, I believe. And then I will be jumping into the last one, which was Oxos. Osos. So, I'm very excited. So again, you know, consider, you know, or it could just be, you know, like kept ceaselessly muttered, panting, trying to tell us something. You know, that could be another way. Like she ceaselessly muttered, panting, trying to tell us something. Just describe the action. Don't necessarily have to do it always through the lens of the viewpoint of characters. Um, all right. My father, grim-faced, gave us the news. We got her to the healers. So that's interesting. So in terms of continuity, our shouts must have scared it off. That feels like we were there. So I would just cut that. Oops. There we go. I would just cut that. Thought they discovered her themselves, which is a better choice. IMO, because we, you know, our viewpoint care is more involved with the action. So in this case, you have, I think maybe like an older version or something. But my father gave us the news when we're just telling, you know, the reader that I lifted them off the ground. As this is a duo POV, how would you do? How would you? How do you ID between 1 and 2? I think it's tricky. It's tricky. Yeah. So if we want to stick to a duo POV, it would be like when we, you know, lifted mom off the ground, her skin chilled our fingertips. You know, and you can have it be dual point of view and still do the exact same things. We and our, and to your point, Pinga, you don't ever actually have to identify who's who in the duo. If you watch that reading I did of the Year of Silence, I did a kind of instructional video a while back. It's in my archives. Um, and I talk a lot about that. I have literally a whole like hour-long spiel about how they manage it, how they're sometimes zooming out into the plural point of view and they sometimes zoom in to a singular point of view. So that that video recording on the Year of Silence is definitely worth a watch. And then yeah, ask me any questions you have. But that will hopefully answer this. And this is exciting because I hope that this is a dual point of view more, but we'll see what happens. It seems like it started dual. As we got her to the healers as soon as possible, but it was a near thing. Mother would be lucky. So then we're switching to a single. So I just say maybe like mother. Mother would be lucky to walk again. So I really like your polysyndeton here. Run and hunt and play. Really, really great. I think it's like that. Let me make sure I'm spelling it right. I haven't used all these terms in a while. I don't do edits very often anymore. Polysyndeton. There we go. I still thinks it's wrong, but polystyrene, no. Here gives a deeper sense of what's been lost. That's an awesome use of prose. That's awesome use of language to underline what's going on in the story. With art like she used to in a world like ours, where it's hunt or be hunted, where we were on a never-ending journey, someone with no legs would be a liability. So again, like being lucky to walk again doesn't feel like an option for someone, you know, with no legs, you know. Are there healers who can, you know, support, who can like regrow in this world? Yeah, I think that's a really interesting concept, but one I would explore a little bit more. My mother hadn't gone off on her own. If she hadn't gone to see my aunt, the chieftainess of Clan Al-Ghazir, Ahagazir. Wow, I'm really bad at pronunciation. Bruh, you're too wound up. Smoke a pipe. I agree. I agree, Krizzo. We're all too round up. Oh, so Black, how's it going? Welcome, welcome. Pinga, yeah, this is a dual point of view. How do you go between 1 and 2? Yeah. Good to see you, good to see you. My mother hadn't gone on her own. If my mother hadn't gone off on her own, I know I need to get my pipe, but I'm not in my garage yet, but soon I will have my garage workstation and I can have a pipe while I work. Oh my gosh. Anyways, if my mother hadn't gone off on her own, if she had gone to see my aunt, the chieftainess of yeah, anyways. As my father says, the clan of heavy eaters, then we wouldn't be in this mess. My father sent runners. So then we're jumping into a singular point of view, which is fine. So it's fine to go from a plural to a singular. But, I kind of want to get a sense of the brothers, if we are going to transfer from a plural POV to a singular, I want to get a sense of the characters of the POV options, before we jump into one. Like my brother and I, or like, little, Billy and I, blah, 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 blah. So give us kind of like some hints at who that we is before we jump into the I, if that makes sense. My mother hadn't gone off on her own if she hadn't gone to see the aunt, the chieftainess of clan. My father says the heavy eaters, we wouldn't be in this mess. My father sent out runners to call for a meeting. So here we are, standing in a muddy field. Angry clansmen behind my father's gave us, yeah. So it's not the father. The rival clan. So I really like this. I really like this setup. This is a really efficient, this is really solid and efficient scene building. We get, are you owning? Are you playing League? Oh, you're looking at all this stuff, yeah. Phil is going to seem a lot of summary, stage setting. Is that me, or is it with acceptable ranges? I think it depends on form, right? Like, this is straddling a little bit of a fairy tale form, right? And fairy tales are very narrator and summary driven. But that's a really good note, right? So then usually what you're going to do is, if you're leaning more on summary, then you might want to consider, so if it starts pulling you out of the story, like we're moving like really, really fast, like this is pacing almost like at an outline, like maybe, if one of the options, if the writer wants to go back and try something different, would be to say, hey, like, let's have a whole scene about this mother getting attacked and them dragging, the mother back, and, and the healers, and it depends on the goals, right? Like, obviously, if they're trying to get to something, that's totally fine. Also, if they want to leave the story as a whole in summary, you'll, as the writer, they might want to think about, hey, am I happy with it the way it is? Is it accomplishing my goals? Or do I really want to give, the narrator, I mean, we're using a first person narrator essentially. So then, it's really, you get a lot of license by doing that, because it's really how that first person narrator is telling the story. Obviously, it'll feel more distant until, it'll feel like a fairy tale. It'll feel kind of like an older style of writing until we start getting into scenes. So those are choices that the writer is going to want to make. Building, we get an instant sense of, where we are. The rival clan spread in a circle in the clearing. Each of the leaders were closer towards the middle, and I recognized my aunt to the right, resting against her spear. Where's my sister? So this, so we're getting a lot of additions to this piece of dialogue, because his dialogue says, sister. He, the hollow is struck again, but we get his face went red, sister. He returned through gritted teeth. He looked around at the other leaders, catching the attention of the hollow has struck again. So my thought here is like, I don't think he's embarrassed. So face reddening generally symbolizes embarrassment, so I might trim that. Turn through gritted teeth. Maybe we can find, like, looked is a very general word, so you might want to find a more specific. He surveyed, you know, the other leaders. And we kind of can imply that he's catching their attention. The hollow. So this rewritten would say, sister, he returned through gritted teeth. Surveying the other leaders. I think I might, comma, surveying the other leaders. The hollow has struck again. So this is a great show. I like that we're showing her reaction. Is that the right paling? No, I think it's P-A-L-E-I-N-G, right? Yeah, no. Yeah, I think it's P-A-L-E. Nonsense, one leader said, we would have heard its cry. So this is a little echoing. It's like a little, this feels like exposition. Yeah, the echoing cry, would have heard the cry. You know, I would lean more towards that. A wild woman dressed in first book next. He's right. She pointed towards us, or rather at a carriage behind us. I can still smell the lingering rot. So I like the use of dialogue. It's starting to do a lot of expository work. So we're getting a lot of information about the symptoms of the creature, and that's one of the advantages of scene is, you know, if you're in scene, a lot of this stuff can be communicated through the actor, the action. I mean, sorry, the actor, but the action where you know they hear the scream that shows that there's an echoing scream. They run out and they smell the rot. You know, so that's another way that you can use those. I can still smell the lingering rot. I like that you're talking about these things in dialogue. You know, you're bringing in those things like smell and stuff. But one of the options that maybe in a revision or in another story you might want to think about is to say, you know, how do I bring them into the description? And that's like one of the tricky things. I mean, you have pretty strong just description prose, like all the sentence structure is working, and then it's just saying, how do I, you know, maybe rely a little less on dialogue to communicate sound, sight, and those types of things and feel. But I like that they're all there. I think that's awesome. But but yeah, she pointed. But I think, you know, I can still smell the lingering rot. So remember to use your viewpoint character. Like the smell reference here, but you know, maybe the viewpoint character can, you know, give some of these observations too. Like, so for example, you could say the reek is still on you. Or like, you know, then it could be like, I took a deep breath and the stink of death made my eyes water. Had I, you know, had I really been, you know, soaked in the beast's musk, you know, I don't know, without realizing it. You know, that could be a way that you can jump between what's being said and, you know, the reactions of all the characters. How do you feel about a line? A wild-looking woman dressed in furs spoke next. My heart is at odds with the words a wild-looking woman. I think the one challenge with that, so let me see. I think I focused on a different area. But yeah, the wild-looking woman, for example, it would have to be relative to the first person, right? So the narrator is the I, and so even though that when we start with a we, there are a few I references that come in. So we are gonna eventually assume that whoever, I think it's this father's son, is the narrator, is the person kind of giving us this information about the world. So if to that first person character, this person is wild looking, that's one thing. The other option is, we could consider a description that leads us to the conclusion that this woman is wild looking. I.e., she wore, auntie, I'll just do like auntie streaked war paint, streaks of war paint, and, darkened my aunt's cheeks, and her dreadlocked hair was tied back. I don't know if that's how you dreadlocked hair was tied back for battle. That's like another silly example, but that might be something that can be helpful. All right. The blind man turned his head toward the carriage. Her heartbeat is rather faint. Is that curse running through her veins? The ant stuck her out her tongue, as if licking something, and stuck her head to her mouth. I like this. So, as if licking something. Yeah, I like this. I feel like you might be able to clarify with interiority. So in your revision, one of the things to think about, this is a smart use of taste, but consider in your revision that you can. Have you gotten a bunch of skins? There's some pretty cool ones. Yeah. What you're up against when somebody's like doing some weird stuff. Yeah. It's a smart use of taste, but consider in your revision that you can use interiority. Like my aunt stuck out her tongue, tasting the air. She tasted what we tasted, the sour, bile of the curse, whatever. And so you can give us some details because remember, and you're actually running into a really, really common challenge is if another character is experiencing and reacting to something, how do you communicate it to the reader from a first point of view? Because you're locked in that first person point of view. And so remember, you have options. So you're doing a lot of just saying of demonstrating through action like what they're experiencing, thanks, and what's going on. But remember, you have more tools in your tool belt. So that might be something to really think about, is to say, hey, I'm using description. I'm heavily relying on description, which is what the prompt was. But maybe description can be a launching point into interior thought, into my aunt stuck out her tongue, tasting the air. So that's description. She retched and staggered. I'm observing that, the viewpoint character. She tasted what we tasted. And so I'm taking that stimulus. So remember, cause and effect, stimulus and response. So I'm taking that stimulus of what what's happening. And that's how we experience the world, through our senses, right? And I have a feeling that this is going to be a theme tonight for everybody's story. I could be wrong. But she's experiencing something, or the viewpoint character is seeing something through his senses. He's seeing his aunt taste the air, but then we interpret it and think about it ourselves and say, oh, if um, you know, if Danielle puts 2 cookies on my desk, um, I can react to that a few ways. I can say, oh, she's so caring and thoughtful. That's so wonderful that she did that. I really appreciate her, which I do, by the way. Or I could say, oh, she's fattening me up for the slaughter, which probably also is true. But that's just as important, right? Because your viewpoint character's reaction to the scene indicates what your reader should be reacting, right? So the fact that, you might have that opportunity, whether it's to use it to kind of clarify what's going on, to say, hey, look, like, this is where the character, this is what she's experiencing, this is what she's tasting, even though we can't taste on her behalf because we're locked in that first person, or to give some context. So that might be a really helpful thing to think about, is think about that thing that happens in the world, and you don't have to do it for every action, otherwise it'll get really repetitive, but for the important stuff, then take whatever is getting experienced and happening in the scene and let the viewpoint character kind of interpret and parse what's going on in a reaction. And she is fattening me up. And it's already too late for us. The old man left, whispered, staring up the sky. The old man too, I left, whispered, staring at the sky. His bare feet were stuffed into the ground. I can feel them. So I really like this. I like that kind of I actually think it's a really, really cool way of doing this, that kind of the individual characters are kind of each, debating over what's going on, with each of them using their senses. So that's pretty cool. You can probably punch up the dialogue here a little bit. I can feel them. Uh-oh. They are coming. So you don't sometimes need conjunctions as much, depending on who's speaking and how they speak. Won't need conjunctions always as much. We need to stand and fight. If we all stood together, every one of us. Oh, that's really cool. But man, step forward, although we have to fight, we do not have the sight of Sadara. I don't know who Sadara is. I don't know if that's the antagonist that's coming to get them. Come on, cat. My cat has joined me. She likes your story. I don't know if I'm aware who this is. If they're on our side or bad guy. A bad character. Look at this spoiled cat. So spoiled. We'll fight, haha, while Woman laughed, hand on her waist, and thumb pointing behind her. We won't be the cowardly ones here. The old man of the Gasheba clan turned and started walking away. All the things my predecessor taught me, chief among them was not to abandon an ally in need. I really like this concept. I'm beginning to really kind of grasp what you're shooting for. Um, uh, um, you know, each yeah, I think that's really, really awesome. And maybe that will nullify some of my notes from earlier. Um, these monsters won't know what hit them. I like it. I like this interiority here, and I wish there was more throughout. Because I want to get to know this character. I like that we kind of have the reveal of the world building at. I think, I like the fact that we have the reveal of the world building at the end, that each tribe has a sense. However, I think I'd honestly be more, like curious to know this from the beginning and see how people, interact in the world and fight a monster with only one, way of experiencing the world. I mean, I think that is such a cool concept. Obviously, this is your story. I do not want to write it for you. But I think one thing I notice a lot of writers do is they have these wonderful ideas. Like, I think this is an absolute wonderful idea, but then, sometimes the idea is masked and hidden, and we don't get to like what the punch is until a little bit late. So, and I think it's sometimes doubting like that is such a awesome setup. It's such a conflict driven setup. Um, but you have such a conflict driven setup that you might really, really be able just to tell us like each tribe only has a sense. Okay, go. They gotta fight a monster now. Like that is such a cool setup. That might be a really interesting thing to explore. Um, yeah, I thought I had some ideas, but I didn't come together as what I thought. I'll say this was awesome. You did an awesome job. Well done. Loved the story and the concept. Overall, I can just, let's do overall. Good. Improve. I think the good stuff is the concept is amazing. Consider, not withholding this because, I'm so curious as to, how does someone with only, taste or with mainly with taste as an uber sense, because they can talk and stuff with taste as an uber sense or another like uber sense, come together and fight a, monster. Sort of like Daredevil, I guess. Writing was overall really strong. I think consider using the exterior action as a launching point for an interior reaction. sees something, thinks about it. Not everything, but like, yeah, like not everything, but important bits. I do think like, are there some, we spend a lot of time in summary, with, the rescue of mom at the beginning. Why, consider, maybe consider expanding some of those moments into scenes and, making this a short story instead of a flash fiction. Overall, amazing job. All right, awesome job, awesome job. I will send that out at the end of the stream. That was 5 Senses by CatDog, everyone. I think that was a really, really great job. How do you feel about the linear? I think it's a thing with good sight. I viewed it as a good way to add detail about the world. Oh yeah, that's a good, yeah. The Hollow Beast is a creature with like really hyper vision. I think that's a really interesting option too. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna do this double space so I don't go blind. Oh wait. Oh well. All right. This is, I think, Pinga Rider's story, and or Infamous, and or Daddy, the many named. Michael and Ashley started their climb to a lair, the origin of soot, the endless flame, the top of the world, unless the Sky God counts, but nobody likes him anyway. So starting with summary, pulls me out a little. Yeah, I like the idea that there's this unloved Sky God. I think there's some cool concepts here. Yeah. Anyways, I feel like, so like if I pull a book from my shelf, I'm gonna be pretty certain that it's gonna start with something that, like, I'll pull two. I'll get the Rhythmatist, and I'll pull a John Updike short story here, and we can read a few of these first lines. So the Rhythmatist book, its first line is boring, Joel demanded, stopping in place. You think the 1888 Cruchoy duel was boring? So immediately we're starting with dialogue. We're starting with something in scene. So that's something to think about. Is, one novel is starting that way, and then we can look at some short stories here. One of my favorite short stories, Pigeon Feathers, by John Updike. And this is, this is opening with one line of summary, and then it goes right into concrete. When they moved to Firetown, things were upset, displaced, rearranged, and he's not using and, right? So he's using ascendant to zoom us through the sentence. A red cane and back sofa that had been the chief piece in the living room at Ollinger here was banished, too big for the narrow country parlor, to the barn, and shrouded under a tarpaulin. So, interesting intro. This is another one. Poor Culp is the first sentence. His wife, and it goes on. Let me see if I find another one here. Solitaire. The children were asleep, and his wife had gone to a meeting. She was like his father in caring about the community. He found the deck of cards in the back of the desk drawer and sat down at the low round table. So we're starting really zoomed in, only like one line about what's going on. So interesting food for thought as you think about how to start your stories. So there are some starts with more the pulled back narrator, the pulled back information, kind of the zoomed out view of summary. And I think they are necessary in some senses, but the sooner you can get out of that mode and into something more dynamic, into that scene, sometimes you'll find that there's a lot more upside that you can get. These mortals, however, had no idea they were climbing a mountain of waste, commonly known as volcanic ash. So we're still zoomed out, but calling poop human waste does not change the fact that it's poop. The male commented on the substance they called ash. Smells like the unknown, as they reached into a pile. So I like the kind of comedic, poop mancy and climbing up this volcanic ash known as poop. But it's also two different things, right? Like, so I'm getting a little confused. So even if you're going to be kind of doing a silly magic system in a silly world, those feel like two different things. If we're calling, like, what's what? Are we calling volcanic ash like waste, like poop? Or are we calling poop volcanic ash? I'm not really sure exactly like where it's getting mixed up. I'm confused if we're calling... Alright. The male commented on something they called ash. Smells like the unknown, as he reached into the pile and lifted up some near his nose. Little did the human know he was sniffing the waste of one of the newer gods. It feels like sawdust. So I like this kind of like volcano is kind of like the god's refuse. That's what I'm gathering. But I'm a little lost as to who the narrator is. It feels like a god. Yeah, the narrator kind of feels off to the side, kind of floating around in a weird area. So one thing, yeah, because it's getting interpreted through this third narrator, but we're kind of mostly in summary again, which is kind of like even what you were kind of discussing in the previous story, where we're zoomed out, we're pulled away, even if the narrator is another character, like one of these demigods who's like, volcanic ash is their refuse and all these things. We still want to be able to zoom into the scene with the characters, or else we're always going to feel this kind of like gray haze, essentially, between what's being described and what's actually happening. Ashley, the female, said, more importantly, it smells like ass. Her words may have sparked some interest, but it was simply a foolish mortal comparison. No logic or reason behind her ideas, and no reason to remove her little head. So interesting. Like I like the POV characters, the narrator's thoughts and goals here, but we're not, but it's hard to contextualize without more connection with the narrator. So like the narrator is making these comments, which I think are helpful, like no reason to remove her head. So like we know that he's some sort of royal figure who will deliver vindictive judgment on this person crawling up his deific outhouse, essentially. But I think one of the challenges you're running into is I don't know enough, like, so we haven't zoomed in enough into these characters to make me care about them. I haven't zoomed enough into this narrator to know if he's good or bad. Like, we haven't listened to this narrator's thoughts. The only thought this narrator has given us is kind of a joking one about, oh, they think they're climbing up a volcano, but it's actually like my toilet. But beyond that, we don't have anything we really care about. And I think that's one of the challenges, honestly, about such silly satirical things is you lose traction, so much traction in the story, so quickly. They laughed and climbed the mountain of waste. It was hard work for them as humans exhaust easily, shown by the water that covered their body. Well, if Google's going to fix it, I'll just do that then. Ashford should have designed them better. The woman, Ashley, was very fit, but as Misty dumped Ashford at the time, he made these humans females. The woman Ashley was very fit, but Misty dumped Ashford at the time. He made these humans females, though perhaps that's why they tend to be smarter than their male counterparts. I'm not really sure what we're trying to get at here. Misty, there's so many names. So like we've been delivered. Oops. We've been delivered so many names with so little context. You know, even your jokes are getting lost. Like I feel like you're trying to kind of poke some fun about, oh, you know, the reason there are differences between, you know, this and that is you know, because some god was mad at another god. But there's so many names, there's so little context being given that the jokes are falling flat, unfortunately. Uh, and much emotional stakes. So I think the thing you want to think about too is the emotional stakes. Like actually, the funniest moments in the stuff, at least that I've experienced, is when you care and when you really connect with the characters in the story and what's going on. And I think one of those, you know, I think so many writers get so fixated on the punchline, punchline. But the best humor comes from character. So let us really, really get to know these characters, and it will be a lot funnier. I had no idea there was more. Was Isher through a toilet, but there was a door. But they climbed until the woman yelled, "Time for a break." The woman's bit her face. Dr. Pack and Grand Connor's face. It's hot as hell. Michael sat beside his human companion. Michael? Oh, it's a different spelling. Okay. I think that's just a misspelling there. So is Michael a god? I thought they both were humans. Those mortals, that's two. So why are we saying that, or are you just referring to them as a human companion? Oh, I see. Oh, I see. Michael sat beside her. I think that's the thing. I think we're overtelling the reader a little bit. Like we sort of like, okay, we get these people are humans and they're kind of climbing up the you know, the god's bathroom essentially to get to the god. But I think you're losing a little bit of you're losing a little bit of clarity. We're losing a lot of clarity in this story, and I think that's one of the things. Like making sure that I understand what you're trying to communicate in every step is really, really critical. And you know, there's so much getting thrown at us. Is as a reader, remember, as you want to just take it a step at a time. Make sure that we're anchored. You have to really, really understand what your reader's experiencing. Otherwise, you might lose some clarity there. And I think we're losing a little bit of clarity. So, like, this makes me think that Inhuman, since his companion is described as human, I don't think this is your intention. But remember, you know, what you write is just as important for clarity as what you omit. And I think because you're highlighting that she's human by saying Michael sat beside her human companion, the fact that you're highlighting something that we would assume is obvious, like the reader is going to assume that these characters are human, especially because you've established it earlier, and also because that's just the general assumption a reader is going to go into with. By calling attention to it, it's just kind of coming off as confusing because they're like, well, is he not human? Yeah. Of course, you're the hottest woman in the world. The woman gazed at her mail. at her mate and wrapped her arms around him. I love you. And they fell into each other. Cheesy, but I love it. So they're climbing up an ash mount. This seems really out of place. So like, you know, PDA feels a little out of place. Climbing up what feels like what I think is a volcano, i.e., a god's toilet. It's trash pile, refuse pile. I think that's what I'm getting at, but the fact that I am not sure, and I'm reading really closely, a light reading of this would probably be, took it at chocolate bar, is this thing endless? But sadly, at the rate they're climbing, these humans would reach the top in a few days. And Ashley, as endless as our love. Be serious. So the dialogue feels a little stilted, right? Like, not connecting. And this goes down to, I feel like jokes and punchlines are overruling clarity and reality. So you're breaking some of the reality and the clarity of the story to get punchlines or silly dialogue or these types of jokes in. But it's going to be really confusing, right? Like, so I think, you're falling into a trap. I know a lot of humorists and, like a lot of people that do improv, if you've ever done improv, will tell you that you want the joke to emerge out of character, someone really being the character. You don't want someone just having a stand-up, just shooting out jokes, because it takes the reader out of the world. And that's, unfortunately, I think what's happening a little bit here is we're focusing so much on the jokes and the one-liners that we're losing the reality of the story. It just feels like, these people aren't like, I cannot care about a character that is just paper, right? Like, I can't care about a character who doesn't follow the rules of reality in the world, because they just don't feel realistic. So you do have to be true to reality at some level, even in humor, or at least the reality of your story. But we're not being consistent, right? Like, they were going up a mountain and sweating. So I assume that someone who's sweating and tired, they're tired, but then, they're kind of sitting here cracking jokes. And it doesn't necessarily, and they're kind of using odd stilted dialogue too, which is also taking away from some of the reality of the scene. Michael licked his dry lips and took out some water. We got to keep our minds off the stress, even if it's stupid. All right, this helps a little bit. I think this helps, rationalize the, rationalize the, like, kind of odd, interaction between these two. Frown, sorry this heat's getting to me, but it says so. Half a chocolate bar. I'll take that as payment. Theft of his fate's mood disguised as flirting. This man is surely an alpha, but thieves are scum. I like this point of view. Again, I don't really know who it's connected to, so it's hard for me to care. Like, give me a little bit, like maybe like one sentence or paragraph about who's our narrator. Like, I am the king of this mountain. This is my refuse pile. This is where I go to take a crap every day, and these people are trying to climb it to get to me. So like, I like these observations from the god, but I don't know who this is or why they care about these two people. I am having trouble, caring either. So like, someone has to take something seriously in the story, right? That's why every humorous thing has like the straight character, the one that plays it straight and is very like fuddy-duddy and grumpy, so that's really, really something important, I think. So yeah, we're losing whoever is grounding the story in reality, and I think, it's kind of, there's nobody that feels realistic. There's nothing that I have to care about. There's no stakes. What are the stakes of the story? Why should I care as the reader? I think are the questions you should be asking. I'll put this down at the bottom. Overall, the good. I'll put this in improve here. I'll lose remember, goal, stakes, urgency are the cores of a scene. Ask, why is this moment important to these characters? That's the number one important thing to communicate. Show me what the characters care about, and I'll care too. That's a little bit missing right now, but that's something I really would consider in your future revisions. I'll never understand your social fruit, even your germs. Great time's over. Took a sip of water. Michael teased, "Oh, there's my wife." Ashley pushed him onto the ashy ground and laughed. "There's my stupid husband." Dusted himself and helped Ashley with her gear. And started climbing the volcano alongside her husband while noting that Michael was perving out on her. Michael smiled as he watched Ashley's rear and joined her. They worked their way up the endless poop pile. "Is you nice come back there?" "I did put a ring on it." Ashley slapped her butt, moved a little more, and she climbed the mountain. Knowing this silly banter helped keep their minds on things other than the heat and the smell in the air, and she also liked messing with his head. So I think the banter's fun. And it makes a lot more sense now that you've given a reason for it. So taking that principle and applying it across the board to all these extra elements you're adding in, right? And it makes, a lot more sense when you give a rationale for it, So take, that principle and apply it to the other, hard to grasp things that are here. The God narrator. Who is he? The poop, volcano. Why, is an, Ashmount, God refuse. So those types of things. So the banter plays out a little better as once we have an understanding and a reason for it. And this is why clarity is so critical in your writing. But the challenge is there's still these other things where we haven't gotten that context yet. And you're, as a reader, I'm kind of getting a little lost, honestly. So the thing that you'll want to be thinking about is, how do I make sure that the stakes, who these characters are, and what's going on is clear? Because I'm like, well, why is this God watching them from his cloud? Why does he care about these people going up a volcano? But, why does he see it as his refuse, his poop pile, where, they see it as a volcano? Why do they see it differently? Is that just what all volcanoes are? There's so much kind of blurred out for the sake of humor. I think the humor is getting pushed out in front. Everything else is kind of crumbling behind it, and I think that's something that I would be really careful of. Humor writers are better, best. Some of the best techniques for doing this sort of thing is try to find a funny situation and just play it as straight as possible. And if you can still get jokes out of that, that's generally going to be a more successful humorous work than adding in a bunch of jokes after the fact. Ashley smiling behind Michael. "Thanks. Let's push forward a little bit more and set up the tent. Ash is getting thicker. Let's stay here. We don't have to dig up the ash. Okay. Stumbling. Swing your hips. It's easy to steal her from that will get her killed." So who's thinking this, right? Is this the God? Who is thinking this? Is this the God's observation? Or is, Ashley, noticing her flirting is putting her at risk? Kind of hard to tell. We're losing a little bit of a sense of the point of view there, which is another thing to be really careful of. Set up a bankroll and cooked bananas and smoked ham they brought with them. Ashley grinned. "I know it's not a good match, but I love cooked bananas." Again, Sugar said he took the meal, banana and some ham. You're the sexiest monkey in the world. So again, then this monkey will enjoy Sundare. I don't know what that means. Am I gonna regret Googling this? Oh, it's a Japanese term for a character that depicts a character as intimately polarized, warm, and soft, and then they get, oh, so they're really mean at first, and then they become soft-hearted. I see. I see. Okay. So again, whenever you're using jargon terms, like that's at least for like me who like studies writing, like that's a new term for me, right? So like on using jargon, consider, sneakily defining it, like the wife could say, I wasn't mean at first. I've always been soft-hearted. I wasn't mean, whatever. Well, I lost my, there it is. I wasn't mean, before I... If only could understand you of a complimental joke. You're not other people, and I splash and nibble in the banana. I hope our journey never ends. I love is silly, I love stupid, it's embarrassed, our love is ours, and it's endless love. Even our simply stupid, endless love will change the world. And anything. I'll enjoy it to the end. Michael glared at Ashley and said, I thought I was the one with the stupid lines. Ashley embraced him before planting a kiss on his lips. It's learning. I'm learning. It's an odd thing. These humans have a different mating call than the other species. It's wordplay mixed with physical education, seduction arts. Perhaps there's something a little more to these mortals. I like this. I like that you have. I like that the viewpoint character changes, by experiencing, by getting to know, two fun, silly mortals. But I don't know the before of who the, viewpoint narrator was enough to feel the impact. Maybe, he, is the grouchiest god, and he's, assigned as a guardian for these two, on their hike, by his boss to, make him less grouchy. That's a silly example, but like, I really like the fact that the viewpoint character changes, and I really like that. I'm gonna actually add that in my overall notes, which is like I like that you have a character changing. I like that. You're looking to have a emotional change and an opinion change. Like that's a really step in the right direction. I like the concept, and the humor was really fun. I never really understood why they were climbing up the Ash Mount, what their goal was, like to get to the top, or they just two mountain climbers. That was kind of lost a little bit. And there also wasn't much conflict, but maybe that was your goal, right? Like maybe you don't want that couple to have conflict, I like that, the couple doesn't necessarily have conflict, but you do need it in other areas. Perhaps it's the narrator's internal conflict. He's observing, or, observing these two, and needs, and maybe his, change of opinion will, make him less likely to end the world. Because now he likes humans, how do we get, goals, stakes, and urgency in a story if you do want, the characters to be good, like the viewed characters to have a light, minimal conflict scene. Honestly, this is called a traveling angel story. I'll put it down here. And I'm trying to think of some examples that do this. Where all the other characters change, but the main characters don't. Yeah. Okay. So the stuff to improve, like I think goals, stakes, and RGs, you do need some conflict. Don't put jokes in front of clarity around the core of the story. If you can. Jokes, will fall flat if they don't, jokes will fall flat if if they aren't anchored in, if they aren't anchored in a reality that's true to itself, even if it's the reality of the story world. Give us, also, like, we need to know, a little more about these characters, gods and world. This doesn't need to be much. Like, just a sentence, like. But I need to understand how the elements of a hiking, mountain climbing couple, an observant god, and a volcano all wound up in the same place. So yeah, I just need a little bit of like, okay, why are all these things here? Just a little bit of like, okay, gotcha. Like this is where I just need a solid ground to start on. If the narrator bashes the two humans more, and have that have an effect on something, I think that could be interesting, but I would give him a goal. Why is he observing it? Like, and that's like a really great question to ask for all these characters is why are they here? Maybe I'll actually write that down. Ask about every character. Why are they here, or why do they have to be here? Why does this god care? Or why do they care? Why does he care about these two? Is he trying to study? Did somebody, tip him off that like, hey, this is actually someone triggered? Should be. I'm seeing some struggle with 3 hints left. Oh. You can skip or. Picture. All right. So I think those are questions. Well, I learned a lot of stuff. Welcome, Oso. Mission movie missed a bunch of that. That's okay, because you're up next. You're up next. Yeah, more than anything, I gotta focus on bringing the world to light. Yeah, I think you have such an awesome world, and I actually should put that up here because I actually really I like the world building of the gods perception of the world versus the human. Ash versus poop. Those are pretty funny things, and those are really really great jokes. But we just want to really sink our feet into the cement. So remember, especially in fantasy and sci-fi, and I think that's one of the biggest. That's why a lot of writing instructors, and I don't do this because I think people can learn. I think the most important thing is to write what gets you excited. But a lot of writing instructors will force their students to write realistic fiction because world building is so difficult that it will overshadow everything else. Very interesting to think about because it does add so much more complexity. Um, and this is a great example, right? You're trying to do, 3 or 4 times as many things. You're trying to establish, okay, who these characters are. You're trying to establish what their goals are. You're trying to establish why I should care. And then you have to establish this complicated dual reality of the way humans perceive the world and the way gods perceive the world. And I think that's a big ticket that's a lot to accomplish. So you need really extensive efficiency, right, to accomplish all those things in, this is not long. It's like 1,500 words about. Yeah, in 1,000 words. In order to accomplish all that in 1,000 words is really Herculean. So I think that's the purpose behind a lot of writing instructors saying, hey, you know what, start with realistic fiction. That's okay. I think start with whatever fiction will get you writing. Write what gets you excited about writing. But, you do have to know that you're going to be really having to, swing for the fences. And you're going to, especially when you're working in fantasy and sci-fi, or you're working with a speculative element, you have to be extremely careful about making sure that reality is extremely clear, and then the core story pillars are there, which is a character I care about, goal, stakes, and urgency. Why do I care? Why is this person cool? What makes them interesting? Why does this matter right now? And why does it have to happen here and now? Why is this happening in this moment? A lot of complicated stuff. I mean, that's, yeah. Uh, Anyways, great job. Very, very great job. I'm going to be pulling up. Yes, yes, yes. Go away. I'm going to be pulling up. I'm going to scroll down. So I don't think Oso. I don't know if Oso wants to have his name up there. Flash Fish Kinetic type. I know. I know. Yeah. And the characters. I think you do a really good job with the characters we're watching, Pinga Rider, but I wouldn't just worry about bringing the world to light. I would really worry about this God character because remember, he is the character that is changing. The other two characters are traveling angels, right? They are being observed in their daily life, but they're not changing. They're not going through a transformation. So the character that does go through the transformation is this God character that's observing them. So making sure that transformation is important. Will it affect the decision that he has to make with the Pantheon about whether to exterminate humans or not? Or will it finally let him, try romance with another god or whatever? Whatever that reason is, you really want to think about why, because you actually have a really beautiful, a really nice moment of transformation here where this character, perhaps there was something more to these little mortals. So he's looking at life, he's looking at humanity and saying, it's all joking aside, they're climbing up a pile of feces, all this joking aside, I actually see value there. But what will this revelation change in his world? That, if you can answer that question in an efficient way, I think you really have a great story here. I think you have something that you will be really excited to revise and to share with people, because I think you'll, and that's why you do rewrites on the early drafts. So I'm really excited to see what you come up with. There's mature themes, so it needs to be skipped. I understand. Interesting. Let me just see. As long as, let me see. Glance over it. Yeah, I'm glancing over this. There is a lot of mature language, unfortunately. So, and some other generally mature themes. Usually some language is okay. Yeah. I appreciate that. I appreciate you letting me know. I probably will have to not be able to edit this one just because Twitch has some pretty strict rules around these things, and I want to be extra respectful of those. And then also that we have a lot of younger readers, so I want to be extra careful of that. So I'm sorry. Thank you for the warning. I'm bummed out that I cannot review it. I was just looking over it and I was like, it's just probably a little bit over kind of the line there. What a bummer. But I'll give you a consolation. If you write a flash fiction, using the five senses, sight, smell, taste, whatever, I will add it to my normal queue. Oh, it's all good. It's all good. I totally understandable. I appreciate you just letting me know. What's the story you can't read about? Oh, it's Osa's. Oh, no worries. No worries at all. I mean, I think there is a place for mature themes in literature. I think it's something that, is, I think there are mature things in life, and I think literature needs to face those things and talk about those things. Unfortunately, we just have a lot of younger viewers here. And, I think some of the, I think, yeah, not a bad thing, but I think stream just has its own limitations. Some spicy erotica? No. I think it's just more mature. More mature. It was probably the best way to put it. I wrote a letter that I'm going to give to my cousin who's going to get married. I love your input on it. It's about 100 words. If you guys want, we can do that. I was actually going to jump to one of my other. I was going to jump to one of my other things in the queue. But I actually probably am going to do some writing. Yeah, send me your 100-word thing really fast, and we can take a look at it together and give you some notes on that. If you want. It'll be just for good fun. And then I might complete... I'm going to first announce the, I think, 5 senses. You win a priority edit. So write some more, and you will be able to cut the line. So great job. I think 5 senses definitely had a lot of really cool world building. I really liked the way the village was structured. Not to say I did not also love Love's ripples and kind of the idea of hey, these small interactions that humans can have can really echo into the extra mortal sphere as well. Yeah. Yeah, that's totally fine. Yeah, totally fine to link it. Yeah, I wish it was more. Yeah, it's like right on the line. I kind of glanced over it, so if you think it's fine, like let me know. But there seem to be a few kind of pretty mature themes that probably want to be a little extra careful about, or at least like kind of, you know, I think just being thoughtful about those young viewers who are trying to learn writing. All right, let's see. Forgot Forsaken's letter. Um, what? All right, this will just be for fun. Let's try that here. There we go. All right. Eh, there we go. Okay. I could SOW. Sob? Sow? Not sure what that. I could sow about a time. Let's read it over once and then we'll go through it in more detail. I could sow about our time in the elevator. Maybe that time I made your other half look bad on the dance floor, or the worst moment of all, the attack of the stage monster. P.S. I still have nightmares. At last, all those moments have one thing in common. Mark. Dumb, brilliant, egotistical cousin. Thankfully, he no longer burns his arm and sings about what he did when he was high. Instead, he yaps about fictional patients and plays League, a questionable improvement. Well, League is a lot of fun. Foxy Lady plays League. And Nicole might be crazy, but united your connection that inspires us to fight the evil sage monster. I like it. I like it a lot. That's really fun. They're going to card alongside a gift. That's awesome. But for public discussion on Twitch, yeah, it's a bit much. That's all good. It's all good. Not one of those young bossers. Yeah, it is 1026. And I'm scared. League was bad for my sanity. Yeah, it can be pretty tough. You gotta, even for me, sometimes after a tough loss, you gotta just take a deep breath. Anyways, I think it's great. I think it's great. I mean, you're using a lot of allusion to things that have happened between you guys. I would focus on the positive. Obviously, what's nice is this isn't. I would say for a speech, this would probably be tough because there's so much reference to things that maybe only you all would know about. I don't know what I could sew about our time in the elevator means. You know, like sob. You know, is that what you're going for? And yeah, like look bad. Like I think I would just be like, hey, like what are some of like I know this is probably in fun, but like what are some positive things? You know, like I always like especially for like wedding stuff, I always am just try to hype it up and just think of the absolute best things. Um maybe like we had a dance off. Yeah, you know, and yeah, but anyways, I think overall it's really really good. Thankfully, he no longer burns his arms and sings. I think like if someone's like a cutter or something, like burns his arm, like I'd probably consider cutting that. Just because like that might be a tough memory for somebody. And, like I don't know, like because I know a lot of people struggle with cutting, where they do physical damage to themselves or burn themselves to like kind of have this sense of like emotional catharsis. But yeah, I think sometimes for those people that habit can come with a lot of just bummer. So like so unless it's like some accident where he like dropped his something on his arm and it's like a funny joke, maybe I'd let that one slide. Because sometimes if someone's like a cutter or something or has one of those like kind of challenges that they're working through, you probably just it's something that's good to talk about and to address. But if it's their wedding day, I don't know, just cut them a little slack and just be like, we're all knuckleheads sometimes and have stuff that we want to work on and find better ways to work on it. Instead, he asks about his fictional patients and plays League, a questionable improvement. I like that a lot. This is a really great joke. I like this. I know Cool Baby crazy, but united your connection inspires all to fight the evil sage monster. I like it a lot, and you should definitely consider sharing them your flash fiction, because I think your flash fiction does a really, really great job of showing this really, really nice, positive, husband and wife relationship, right? And we may need more clarity in your flash fiction about, okay, why are they there? what's kind of the setup. But overall, like I think it's a really, really nice message, right? So that might be something really cool you could share with them. Then you can say, "Oh, I wrote it for you guys as a testament." Anyways, I hope that's helpful. I'm gonna pause the stream for a few minutes, and I'll be back on. And I'm a little bit behind on my writing today, so I'm gonna get cranking on some revisions on my story. But great job, everybody. I'm gonna pause the stream. We'll be back on in about 5 minutes or so. Yeah, great job. Thanks for sharing it. It's a little bit more personal, but it's always funny, language is everywhere, and how we think about language is applies everywhere. So I think it's always very fascinating to see those different things that people are writing, whether it's a story or anything else. But anyways, I'll be back on in about 5-10 minutes, depending on how long it takes me to switch everything over to my normal editing, and then we'll probably do another edit soon because I have more stuff in the queue, so maybe this weekend. But I really wanted to do the flash fiction stuff because y'all have been working so hard and been doing such awesome work. So I'll be right back. And congrats to CatDog, who got the free priority edit. Yay!